Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Tonsoni, Delphi High School. We are trying this video conference assessment tool. We are going to be talking a little bit about voting. I am joined with Kayla and Riley, two of Delphi's outstanding students, and we're going to talk a little bit about voting philosophy. Take it away, ladies.
Okay, so Franklin D. Roosevelt once said that nobody will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote except the American people themselves, and the only way they do this is by not voting. So I believe that one should vote as if the right to vote depends on it. So my main goals when I will get to the point where I can vote is to be aware of both the parties and their beliefs, get quality information, understand the plans of actions that the candidates are going to put in if they were to be elected president, and to also know ethical and moral values of those candidates.
Very good. Kayla.
I strongly believe that political parties do more harm than they do good. So for me, it's not so much about who the candidate belongs to in a party, rather than if their core values correspond with mine. So.
Okay, so very good. Both of you have talked about values and issues. Let's go back to Riley. Tell me a little bit about how the process of how you're going to find out who you would vote for. What's your process?
Okay, so I have three main things that I would look at when I'm voting for someone, and they are abortion, the death penalty, and affirmative action. For abortion, I believe that human life does begin at conception, and abortion is killing a child that has no power to defend itself. And so I support pro-life and see really no other way that abortion could be justified, even with rape victims, that's still a kid and it's still their life, and there's no one to stand up for that kid.
Okay, very good. And Kayla, your process, how are you going to go about making your decision when it comes time to vote?
I also have abortion as one of my main topics that's a major issue for me. I don't agree with abortion. Even under extreme circumstances, such as what Riley said with rape, it's still a human being. It doesn't have the right, it doesn't have the option to decide whether it wants to come into the world or not, because you're taking that away from it. And it doesn't even get the chance to develop and become something great that it could be.
Okay, very good. Let's go back to, how are you going to know for sure what candidates or what people say? What is the procedure? Where are you going to get information?
Okay, so they have where they do Republican parties, and they have where they all talk in front of everyone, and from there you can see what they say, and you can also see how they respond to things and how they relate stuff. So from there, and then also doing research, because with ethical and moral values, you can look at their history and things they've done that were either good or bad, and see how they were. But then I think I would start by looking at the beliefs that I side with, and then also after I kind of decide who I agree with and what they think, then going in to see how that candidate is actually as a person.
Kayla?
I'm on the same page with Riley. So I feel you need to do research, and you can't be biased about it. If you think that you're a Republican, I feel a lot of people, they make their decision based off of political parties. They don't necessarily give other candidates, if they're Republican, they don't give the Democrat the chance to explain, they don't listen to their opinions on things, because they already think that they're sided with the Republican or vice versa. So I feel for me, I want to focus on not being biased and listening to both sides and doing research to see if, just because they're saying something, if their previous actions represent what they're saying, or if they're just saying it to get the vote of people.
Okay, very good. Well, you both mentioned some things that you are that you value. What are some issues that we studied that you feel are not as important to your decision?
Something that's not as I wouldn't say it's not important, but I can't relate to it myself, would be gun control, because like it is like an extremely important topic, but I can't relate to it because like I don't go hunting or like have a weapon at all. And like even I can't relate to it with my friends because my friends don't really go hunting either, and I've never been, and like my friends like dads go. So from that standpoint, like I can't relate on whether like how I would feel if my guns were taken away because I'm just not in that situation.
Caleb?
A topic that for me wasn't a humongous deal was global warming, because yeah, I think that our environment is important and we should take care of it, but I feel like that's not something that's going to prevent me from voting on a candidate because they're either for or against or think that it is or isn't happening. It's not that big of a topic for me.
Okay. Now here comes probably the tough question that I have for you. Your stances on a very controversial topic, abortion, are very similar to mine. I agree with both of you young ladies. Where do you stand with other issues of life other than abortion, like the death penalty is a life issue, and some would argue that feeding and the hungry and poverty are life issues as well. Where do you guys sit on some of those other life issues besides abortion?
Okay, so death penalty was a big issue for me because I plan on being like a doctor of some sort, and all medical professionals have to take the Hippocratic Oath, and in this oath, like you swear to preserve human life, like no matter the case. And so this sways my views on the death penalty because I think that it is an acceptable alternative for someone that has taken someone else's life to be put in jail for the entire life. And also with the death penalty, like there are like evidence that you may not know at that time that they find out later, but if they put that person to death and then they can prove their innocence, like you just killed an innocent person. Now, my opinion's like completely swayed if it's someone that like goes and kills like 20 people, like that's different. Then I think the death penalty would be acceptable.
Okay. Kayla?
Yeah, that's tough. Like if they've killed like 20 people or they're just kind of a sick, twisted person. But that's still touchy for me because in my opinion, I'm like a religious person. So for me, I don't feel like it's up to anyone else to decide when that person's time is to end. It's completely up to God and what he, like your intended plan. So for me personally, I don't think the death penalty is right whatsoever.
I haven't shared a whole lot of my thoughts because this is your assessment, but I'm kind of with both of you there. That the mass murderer. Oh yeah, I get that. But then your faith position, Kayla, is very. I don't know that I can decide, even in the worst murder situation. So that's a tough one. Where are you guys with poverty and other issues in quality of life issues?
I think the government does need to step in on poverty, and like everyone is a taxpayer and everyone has to pay taxes, and I think that some of that tax money should go to like people. Like the only time I really notice is people like poor people being helped is when like church organizations or groups like go out of their way to like set up like food kitchens or stuff, and they're doing that out of their own time and money. So I think that the government should provide money for that. And also because that is like America is a nation and those are our people as well. It's not just people that can afford, like the people that can't afford they also matter. And I think that that's like a big thing that America's proud of, that we take care of our own. But then we'll like criticize other countries like, oh, look at your poor population. Like we have it here too. And so I think that the government does need to like provide a fund for that.
Okay. Any thoughts, Kayla?
Okay. I think everyone's like life, no matter whether you're wealthy or poor, like it's all, every human being is equivalent. And I feel like taxes and stuff should go to families that can't afford, because maybe some situation happened and they can't get back on their feet, and there's like they have children and their children need like food or clothing or shelter. But then on the opposite side of that, I have opposing views of our government needs to help those families, but I feel like our government puts too much money and gives benefits to people who are just flat out lazy, and they just don't want to go get a job. They don't want to do things because the government hands them what they need, and they take advantage of the system when the government's trying to help them.
And so you think that argue that they are enabled to not do much because we help. You want to help, but you don't want to enable them to not help themselves.
In certain situations, because there are certain people who take advantage of it. But I think that people who truly are in need, like they need the help, and we should help them.
And then what we would go ahead.
And to answer back to Kayla, I completely agree to that. There are people that take advantage of welfare. Like in welfare, I think should be put into place for like people that are disabled that physically cannot do it for themselves. But they just I don't know what state it was. They had said like sued the government or whatever to get minimum wage raised. So they raised minimum wage, and then the people that were working full time were getting too much money to qualify for welfare. So then they sued the government again to get their hours cut, so they could still get their hours cut, work less, get paid more money off of that, and still qualify for welfare.
Those situations, I agree. Interesting. We're talking about this in our senior econ right now. And there is a difference between those who don't show up to work, do some things, do the lawsuit that Riley's talking about. Then there's the factory worker who worked 30 years and the business went overseas. Is that my microphone causing that? Do you hear that? A little
I think
buzz? I'll try to turn my microphone down a little bit. But you'll be interesting. You'll pick up a lot more of that next year when we talk about econ. I will tell you this is make sure you understand statistics when you start talking about that. How many people actually are involved in a lawsuit like Riley? How many people are lazy and taking advantage? And they are, because there are young people who can't keep jobs in Lafayette factories because they just don't go to work. They just miss. And that is not good. But we just need to know total numbers and don't jump to conclusions that we hear a story about one lawsuit or we hear a story about one person being enabled. And so, but both of you understand there are benefits to that and there are concerns for that. So that's good. How are you going to balance when you may have conflicting views? If you are on one side of this issue, and then your viewpoint on another issue contradicts who you may vote for or who you may choose, how are you you pick some issues early, so those are important to you, but how would you make that final decision if you are somewhat over on the liberal side and somewhat over on the conservative side? How would you go about trying to make that decision?
Right. Well, with Kayla, she said earlier about parties and that people look at only one side or the other, like according to like parties, which I think it would matter more on like my beliefs. And then if I got it where like there are some of them that I'm like on the fence, like not I guess on the fence, but I'm on one side for one situation and on the other side for a different situation. And I guess that would depend on the candidate and also the topic, because like for me wanting to be like a medical professional, like that I guess makes my like opinion or views on things biased toward that, making those like values more important to me.
Kayla?
My religious values affect my like what is most important to me and what's not as important. So I feel like when I'm voting, it's going to be if I have some kind of conflict where I don't necessarily, I can't decide, or like I'm going to refer back to my religious beliefs and my values that like I've been raised upon, and things that to me are just like more important. So
okay, and I think that's how you should, and I admire that. Any closing statements? What have you learned? What's the most important thing from the takeaway from this unit that we've studied?
I would say the most important takeaway is that to actually use like our voting rights that we're given, and to not take them for granted, and to know that like your vote counts. And just because like I'm one person, like my vote makes a difference on like voting for who I think would make the best like president to push forward and create like a more successful like United States.
Final thoughts, things, most important thing or an important thing?
It's extremely important to me to vote, especially being like a female, because we kind of came in late on getting our right to vote, and women have always like fought for equality and trying to get up there and be like an equal part of society. So it's especially important for me to vote. I mean, yeah, we're given that right through the Constitution, and that's a freedom, and you should want to practice your freedom and you're right, because it's important, but also because, especially for me, and I don't know about Riley, but for being a female and getting the right to vote, that's extremely important to me, and I want to practice it and do it because we haven't always had that.
Very good, very good. Both of you young ladies are very impressive. It's honest evaluation, and you have to answer these questions for you and you alone, not for Brian Tonsoni, not for your mom or dad, not for a neighbor. I have a lot of respect for you. Thanks for trying this out. I'm going to end the recording, but don't sign off yet, okay? This is Mr. Tonsoni with our first ever video conference assessment. These ladies are going to get an A. We'll see.